On everybody, welcome back to another team preview. The Los Angeles Rams is on the agenda for today. If you're here for the first time, did not make it the last time, make sure you drop a sub while you were here. Hit that like button for your boy as we get into the Los Angeles Rams, who, last year the Rams were kind of a value in fantasy drafts, right? We had about 3-4 players that became fantasy relevant throughout the year, and one that we drafted really high that wasn't as fantasy relevant. So a lot of the same cast is going to be back for this year. So you can expect a lot of the same when it comes to as far as like who the reliable pieces are in this team. But for the Rams themselves, we got to figure out a couple pieces on this team, right? It all starts with the quarterback position and Matthew Stafford. So Matthew Stafford, obviously last year, coming into the year, there was concerns about like his elbow. He's getting older. There was retirement talk from him, trade talk. There was a lot going on with Matthew Stafford last year. And he came into the season, there was a lot of question marks about him for the future, right? Stetson Bennett got drafted to the team. They were like, yo, Stetson Bennett has the potential to be like the takeover at QB. And it's like, what was going on with Matthew Stafford early last year? He quieted that very easily. He was QB 15 on the year, threw for almost 4,000 yards, 3,965 yards. He only played 15 games, so he would have cracked 4,000 had he played a normal 17-game slate. He threw for 24 touchdowns, had 11 interceptions. So this is a guy, Matthew Stafford, we were taking him at the back end of the QB2 conversation. Depending on who you were drafting with, you might have been able to get him later or your league size. But Matthew Stafford played well last year. Like I said, QB 15, and that's on a full season on a per-game basis. He was better than that. So it helped that he had receiver PUKA NACUA breakout. It helped that the run game got going with Kyren Williams. But at times, he was missing Cooper Kupp. At times, he was missing Kyren Williams throughout the entire season. So it's like he was able to produce with Tutu Atwell, Demarcus Robinson. Like there were some guys in this offense, and he was still getting the job done. I think Matthew Stafford proved last year that he's still a viable quarterback when it comes to like backup quarterbacks in fantasy. In any given week, he could produce 250 and 3 touchdowns. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility any given week. So when it comes to him this year, I think with the same cast of weapons back, we can expect higher end QB2 values. And I think he's going to be underrated because Stafford's probably going to go a little bit later than some of the more notable names out there, right? Some of the names with upside. And as long as Matthew Stafford stays healthy, we know what to expect with him. Probably around 4,000 yards, probably about 25 touchdowns, not a lot of no rushing at all, right? So as long as he's clean with the football, doesn't throw a lot of picks, he already does that. As long as he's able to produce that again, I don't see a reason why he won't be a high-end QB2 in leagues when it's all said and done, right? There might be guys with more upside. There might be guys with a little bit, the rushing that you want to see, or maybe we'll throw more touchdowns, but he's a safe QB. And I think as your QB2 in a super flex league, or maybe as a backup for you, he gets the job done. All right. We got to talk about running back on this team. And, it starts and ends with Kyren Williams now. Last year, Cam Akers was there, got cut or traded, to the Minnesota Vikings. We saw Darrell Henderson come in at times. Like Kyren Williams was a standout all-pro last year in real football. And that translated really well to fantasy because he was a top 5 player on a points per game basis at the running back position. He finished RB7 in only 12 games. He missed 5 games and finishes the RB7, which is wild. Had 1,144 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns, 32 receptions, 206 yards, and 3 receiving TDs. So 15 total touchdowns, had almost 1,500 total yards, and this is just in 12 games. So the expectation is like, we got Kyren for damn near free last year. This year, is he worth the first-round draft pick? Is he a lock to be a top 5 to 7 running back? That's the question you need to ask yourself heading into the year. The Rams did something in the draft. They drafted a pretty good back in Blake Corum in the 3rd round. So I'll talk about him in just a second. But when it comes to Kyren, one of the concerns was that he has a smaller frame. And we saw that last year. He got banged up a little bit. He's coming into this offseason. He's already banged up. He's having foot problems right now. So when it comes to Kyren Williams, this season, I think we got to scale back our expectation. It's so easy to put him into because of what he did last year, he should be a lock for top 5 to 7 back because he did it in 12 games last season. And I think we got to calm down a little bit because Sean McVay publicly talked about it last season, and he's already talked about it this offseason that they want to limit Kyren's touches because of his frame. They want to. And so whether he produces at that rate or not, that he did last year remains to be seen. But less touches coming from the head coach already sounds like we got to start to exercise a little bit of caution when it comes to Kyren Williams, okay? So where he's being drafted will matter towards the end of summer. I want to see him get on the field. He's not going to be available for offseason workouts. Let's see what Kyren Williams looks like on his return when he comes back. For now, I'm leaving him at the back end of the RB1 conversation. If that 8 to 12 range, somewhere in there, depending on your league your settings that you have for your league, that's where I have Kyren Williams for now. I'm not putting him any higher than that. So if you like Kyren, I'm not mad at you. I just think that we got to exercise a little bit of caution when it comes to Kyren Williams. And then Blake Corum, I talked about him just a second ago. Blake Corum drafted in the 3rd round by the Rams, 5'8", a little bulkier than Kyren, 215. Played for Harbaugh in Michigan and had a really good senior year, 1,245 yards, 27 touchdowns in his senior season. What? This guy should be a really good back for this Rams team. And if something were to happen to Kyren, Blake Corum would immediately step into like the RB2 conversation. Same thing, which was what happened with Kyren last year. And he exceeded that, right? Blake Corum can be used in the red zone. Obviously can handle high volume when it comes to workload. And we've seen this with Sean McVay in the past, right? He used Darrell Williams till he couldn't no more. He used Cam Akers until he couldn't no more. He's going to use Kyren until he can't anymore. He leans on his backs in a major way. So for Blake Corum, this is a guy that if he gets an opportunity, he will be a fantasy factor. For now, we have to assume he's going to take some kind of backup role, be a part of the offense instead of being the offense. It would not surprise me. Would not surprise me if at some point this season, we're talking about Blake Corum as a potential starter for your fantasy team. It wouldn't surprise me. Something happens to Kyren. He's on the shelf with an ankle for a couple of weeks, or, he's banged up a little bit. We see Blake Corum get used in the red zone. Like, those are going to be things that we're looking for when it comes to Blake Corum. It would not surprise me to see him have some kind of role in this offense this season. And I expect him to take work away from Kyren at some point in the year. Okay. So just know that he's there. He's not this huge guy, but he's a nice little bowling ball size running back, and he's agile too. So Blake Corum, a name to remember in your drafts. Late in those rounds, I never really advocate for handcuffs, right? But this is a player, if I didn't have Kyren, I might be looking at him as a higher upside flyer later on in the year. All right, and probably the hardest position, I would say, on this team to kind of quantify is the receiver position, right? Last year, Cooper Kupp was a top 5 lock at the receiver position to go in drafts, right? In fantasy drafts, he was a top 5 receiver. We knew what to expect with Cooper Kupp. He had got injured the year before. The year before that, he was great. We're like, okay, Cooper Kupp should be back this year. They drafted Puka NACUA in the 5th round. And it's going to be hard to get, drafts are going to be hard this year because everybody's going to go to Puka NACUA after a record-setting season. Puka NACUA was the wide receiver 4 last year, had 105 catches, 1,486 yards, almost 1,500 yards in a rookie year, and 6 TDs in a rookie. I mean, he set some records last season. And this is for a guy that was a 5th round pick behind Cooper Kupp. He really got his opportunity early on when Cooper Kupp was out for the first few weeks. It was like, all right, Puka NACUA show. It happened. And he played well throughout the entire season. So the biggest question when it comes to Puka NACUA is, what are we expecting this year? Is he the outright one in this offense, and Cooper Kupp plays a complementary role? And I think the major question we're all kind of just assuming right now is Puka NACUA the one on this team? Is he the leading receiver on this team? He was last year and had a great year. I'm not taking anything away from Puka NACUA. But Cooper Kupp is another year older. Cooper Kupp has also shown a really good chemistry. He's had really good chemistry with Matthew Stafford. I'm sure it'll be somewhat dialed back. But what I'm expecting from NACUA and from Kupp is that we have games where they both look like they're the number 1 receiver. It'll be matchup dependent. 1A, 1B. I think you got to put Puka NACUA ahead because of what he did last year. Especially, he carried this offense at times throughout the year. And even in the playoff game, it was apparent that he was probably going to be the lead dog heading into this year. So Puka NACUA would still be the 1A. But I don't think the disparity is so much. I don't. I think that Puka Nacua is the one. And I think Cooper Kupp is still right there. Nacua is going to be a little overdrafted because he's going in the top 10 of receivers right now. Cooper Kupp's going outside the top 20, which makes him a little bit more of a value. Remember, we tend to disvalue some of the older, injury-prone. It's a little bit more risky with Cooper Kupp. But if he plays 15 games, you're getting a major reward. When he played, Cooper Kupp last year in an injury-plagued season finishes a wide receiver 40. Now, he only played in 12 games. So you add another 5 to that, and we know Cooper Kupp can go for 100 or a touchdown damn near any game he plays. I mean, to end the season last year, he had five double-digit fantasy points in those games. 5 straight games with double-digit fantasy points the last 5 games of the year. It's not crazy to think that Cooper Kupp was just dealing with an injury. He was out the first 4 games, came back, re-injured himself, and it was like we never really saw Cooper Kupp at full speed until the end of the season. So my prognosis for both of these receivers. Here's how I think about Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. How do you draft them? Like, where do you draft these guys? Puka Nacua should be a back end to high end wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. Back end wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2. And I think Cooper Kupp right now is probably being valued as a high end wide receiver 3. He needs to be drafted into the wide receiver 2 conversation. That's what I think. You get the upside, you take the risk with him being older. He's been injury prone the last 2 years. You bake that in because we could still, any given week, Cooper Kupp could be 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, 8 catches. We know that. And in PPR leagues, you know how valuable those catches are. So Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, you have to know those are the only 2 guys really that's a factor on this team. And if they're both healthy, which we have to assume coming into the year, we have to assume health, both of them will be productive this year. Both of them. And they're both going to have times where they look like they're the guy. All right. So I think Nacua, put him up there. Kupp is going to be the value. And then at the tight end position, Tyler Higbee has been a rock for this Rams team throughout the years. But Colby Parkinson is a sleeper tight end, in my opinion. He played well at times for the Seattle Seahawks, and he's had some decent games. Tyler Higbee is expected to be out for a good portion of the year, maybe until the second half. So he's a sleeper in like your 16-team leagues. If you're looking and you wait really long at tight end, I wouldn't expect him to beat Tyler Higbee, but if he was like, decent and startable at times throughout the year, it wouldn't shock me. I don't expect him to be a huge part of this offense, but for your deeper leagues, if you're looking at Colby Parkinson, I think that there's some potential here to surprise and kind of catch the fantasy community off guard. In redraft, what I think will happen is if he has a good week in the first week, 2 or 3, like I really think he'll have a good game in the first week or 3. He's not a guy that I would pick up and be like, oh, I'm going to lean on him throughout the entire season. I just think there's going to be spike weeks for him, just like there was with Tyler Higbee. All right. So that does it for the Rams. If there's anybody else you want to hear about, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.